Hey everyone, welcome to Bows, Bros, and Bucks. This is Kyle, your host on the podcast today. We have an awesome guest. His name is Cody Idol. We'll hop right into the podcast. This is number 23. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care.
All right, dude. I am so sorry. It has taken so long. I feel so bad. It's taken so long to get you on.
Oh, no, I mean, realistically, it's probably more my fault. I've been traveling so much and just started a new business, and there's just, yeah. I, I I always think in my head like I've got more time than I do, and then I get to the weeks that I'm talking about, and it's just like, oh shoot. So I didn't mean to push you back if I did a couple times there.
Oh, you're totally fine, dude. It's everyone's busy. What business are you starting if that's public knowledge?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's actually the it's called the OG brand, but it's based off of the original General. Brand new, but it's still in formation in certain parts of it. But the short of it right now is that it includes filmmaking, merchandise, and of course the replicas of the General, as well as future well-known deer coming
Sure.
soon.
Awesome. Kind of like the new change with like the stickers on it and everything.
Yeah. So if you can go now, the website is up. It's actually called originalbygod.com.
Oh, I've
And
seen that. I'm dumb. Yes, I have seen that.
yeah. So that's it. That's the foundation. The website's only been live now for about maybe 10 days. Um, and I think as of right now, we've got, you know, 8 scale, quarter scale, and half scale replicas on there and yeah, all of them are the OG General with the kickers put back on. Like I said, there'll be more deer and there'll be other avenues there, but we're in the process of a couple different exciting projects on the filmmaking end, and yeah, so it's going to be fun. It's a lot of different things. It's a very different approach to starting a business, but and of course, my partner is, the gentleman who bought the General,
Mm-hmm.
and we both have other businesses, so um, it's made life hectic in the best kind of way lately, but we're excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that idea because there's a company I think my fiance's friend owns. It's like Mini Muleys or something, but they only do I think mule deer. Um, that they make like the small replicas of your deer. They don't do like the specific famous deer like that. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's kind of the biggest difference. It's going to be specifically, very well-known deer, and also, and I think I've got a handful of the different replicas sitting around my office from the past. I think I bought some mini muley stuff and I bought a couple from like Baby Booners and stuff. Um, and not to take a single thing away from them, what we're doing here, the extent that we're going to for the quality of these is pretty wild.
Yeah,
And the next wave of the replicas that are coming out they're going to be incredible.
that's awesome. What's one feature that you think is the best part of it? Is it like CAD or what's the best part that you think?
Well, it's the way. Now, I can't share the process yet
Sure,
because that part is not disclosed yet.
that's fair.
But essentially, they're going to be the most detailed replicas in existence. That like even the little ones will have, like, if the deer had a scratch on the beam from using it, rubbing or fighting or whatever, it's going to be on the replica, even on the little one, like down to the letter. Um, and just taking a lot more time and energy into making like even the smaller replicas look like real antler. Because a lot of them, you see them, they're painted, and it's more difficult the smaller you go to actually match all those details. And so
Sure.
um, I think I guess it's kind of extensive too, like what we're going through to get there, and that we haven't put any out officially yet that are that, I guess you could call them that generation. Um, I love the little ones that we're doing so far. We're just switching up the style a little bit for like what we're going to do for the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, also, I feel like I haven't properly introduced myself. My name is Kyle Bentall. I know we've been talking for a while, back and forth texting for feels like forever. But yeah, it's nice
Yeah.
to officially talk to you and meet with you. So you're originally from Montana, right? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Born and raised in kind of up in the Flathead Valley up there, kind of right outside of Glacier National Park. Um, and lived there till like my mid 30s, and then, or I should say about 33, and moved to Nashville for a few years. And then now I live down in South Florida. I've been here for going on 3 years.
Awesome. Is your dad still around?
He is.
Oh,
He
okay.
sure is. Yeah. And he's going to be heavily involved in the OG brand as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I wrote down a couple questions that I had for you, and I actually asked a couple of my buddies if they had any questions that they wanted me to ask you. So I wanted to
Fantastic.
be a little bit prepared, and also right before that, I was wondering, could you introduce kind of you and your dad in a short summary, just a couple minutes of like what your guys' legacy is? I know you're humble, so you might not talk too much about it, but just what you and your dad did and have done for the community of hunting.
Sure. I mean, and what I'll say more here, it is more about him. Um, my story is a lot shorter than his so far. But yeah, he was one of the early collectors. There was a few other big timers like Fred Goodwin back in the day that were collecting most of the big heads back before it was popular to do, and big sheds. And my dad bought Fred Goodwin's collection um, way back in the, I don't know the exact year off the top of my head. I think it was in the 70s. Um, but that's about the time too that he bought the Hole in the Horn, and this was all starting right before. So he owned a lot of these, you know, very famous deer that we all know now. And this was just right before him and a gentleman named David Morris founded North American Whitetail Magazine. And it was a natural segue back then into writing articles and telling the stories of these deer that most people at that time had not heard. So he was the first, one of the first, I should say, to really shed light on the stories and tell the tales of where these big deer were coming from. Um, and of course, not to go past that, he was an excellent whitetail hunter. I mean, that was his passion. The collecting came later because he loved hunting whitetail so much,
Sure.
and he's killed many big deer over the years, and I think he's had 7 or 8 of his that have been on the cover of North American Whitetail.
Wow.
Um, but then that segued into some of the early, like, I mean, this stuff is like VHS now,
Sure.
but early hunting shows, and he did stuff with like Gene and Barry Winsell, and he was doing stuff with Cabela's and Johnny Morris and all of them back then. And that later turned into, once the stories started getting big, um, and whitetail hunting kind of became a nationally known thing that got spotlighted, as opposed to just something that people did, in the local area where they were from. All of a sudden, it was like there was a scene, and he started back then to travel with all those deer, like the traveling display. And so he was doing like keynote speaking, and um, yeah. So I mean, it's kind of a broad range, but he really was like Mr. Whitetail back then. And as far as I go, like I said, my side's much shorter, and I haven't had the impact that he has had by any stretch. I grew up hunting with him. I learned everything I knew from him, and I developed my own passion and love of the outdoors and hunting. And of course, I grew up in mountain country in Montana, so I didn't even specifically grow up just hunting whitetails. We hunted bear and moose and elk and everything else. But I'd say many years after he stepped away from the scene, I at one point really decided to start trying to just maybe pick up the torch and carry it as
Sure.
far as just sharing the big whitetails and their stories and shedding light on really like what made hunting big whitetails great. And just and of course, like the good old days when it was about really getting in the woods and scouting, and before cameras and
Yeah.
all the technology that we have, and developmental properties and all kinds of stuff like that. Not taking anything away from that, just a different time, right?
Yeah.
um and to be honest with you, I don't know, I couldn't even say that I've had any impact on the whitetail space. I can just say that I just learned that there's a big hunger for that stuff, and
Yeah.
I've worked really hard to kind of bring some of that to the table there for others, and it's allowed me some awesome opportunities and great relationships, um and I guess the rest of it's yet to be told.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I know some people would frown upon like caring about records and score, and for me it's more about giving praise to the animal itself. Like you've talked about how God intended it to grow and just the peak and the pinnacle of what these deer can get to. And they deserve to be recognized because they're so unique, so special, and so rare. So for me, I think that's the coolest thing about you sharing. When I was growing up, I mean, in New Hampshire, I didn't have trail cameras. I literally just would go out before I even started hunting, just tracking the deer in the snow. And I
Yeah.
think for me, learning all those basics made it so much better. And then when I first finally got a trail camera, I got like a Browning and I got my first decent buck. I thought it was the biggest deer on earth. It was like an 8 pointer without brow tines. And it was probably like 110 inches, and I just like was screaming. It was probably a 3 year old, but for me, seeing the bucks that you post and all the ones that are out there, it just gives people that drive to like go try to find that one or get out in the woods, which I think is
Yeah,
good. And there's also negatives that people will think like, oh, if my buck's not that big, then it doesn't matter, which is far from the case.
of course.
Every buck's important. I always say you can't eat the antlers, but you can sure salivate over them. So
I
that's what
like
I
that.
say.
I like that. Yeah, man. I mean, my stance on that stuff, because of course you can imagine like social media and stuff like that. There's always going to be folks that say stuff like that,
Yep.
like that's all you care about or anything like that. And I'll tell you the honest to goodness truth. I did not even really know, because my dad's like an old tobacco farmer type that, and he's from a generation that they didn't really talk about themselves. And so, like, I grew up and I had kind of read between the lines over the years that he did some awesome stuff in his heyday. But he was like in his 40s when I was born. And so,
Oh
by
wow.
the time that I was old enough to hunt in Montana, which you have to be 12 years old to
Sure.
be able to get a hunting license, he was in his 50s. And to me, he was just my dad. He was who he taught me how to be in the woods, and honestly, I didn't know anything about the outdoor industry whatsoever. I didn't know any of the like names in the industry, and I really didn't even know much about the extent of what my dad had done. He was just my best friend and my hunting buddy that I spent all the time in the woods with. Honestly, up until I was like late 20s, early 30s, I couldn't have told you any of the brands. I wouldn't have cared who was doing what on social media. And so to me, I say all that to say it really was, I just had a drive and a love to be out there.
Hmm.
Like I was the happiest, just turn me loose in the big woods and I could just be there. It didn't matter if I filled a tag or not. I just loved being out there and I love the adventure. It's another reason why I love shed hunting so much is it led me to all these incredible places and beautiful, beautiful scenery and mountains. And I never cared about anything else. So like, even when like my social media started to kind of grow and people are like, oh, you're just highlighting the the biggest deer, I would say, look, I'm just sharing what I find fascinating, what I enjoy, what I like. I'm like, this, I see this picture and this is crazy. I'm going to share this. There's nothing else behind it. There was no motive,
Mm-hmm.
no, and I have people all the time that share, hey, I got this buck in North Carolina, and it's like a 3 by 3. It has nothing to do with really like what does it score, but they're excited to share it, and I get just as excited for them.
Exactly.
That's the point, and the point of a lot of my best friends and my best experiences with those friends has been, hunting and also hunting camp, sitting around the campfire, spending time with them in the woods. And if you really love being out there, you can go a whole season without filling a tag and be as happy as it gets, because it's great to fill a tag, but it's about truly being an outdoorsman. And that's really what I want. And ultimately, even in business, all the stuff I'm doing, I work all the time so that hopefully at some point in my life I can spend a lot more time just hunting, because I love to be out there
Exactly.
so much.
Yeah. No, I'm the same exact way, and I'm glad you stated that because that's exactly how I feel. Um, a couple of the questions that I did want to ask you. One of them, someone asked me, since you've met with so many big buck hunters, what's the most 200s you've heard killed by someone besides Spook? Because I've heard about his, but
Yeah, gosh, I mean, yeah, Spook probably has the most that I know of. Now there's a set of brothers up in Alberta
I've heard
that I
about them. Yeah,
yeah, I believe between the two of them, they're up there too, 18 or 20. Um, and um, and what's crazy is they're all from that same like region up there, which is
really.
incredible. Yeah, they're local to there, and they've been all through the heyday of Alberta, Saskatchewan whitetail days.
Yep,
Um, but that's probably the most. Obviously, we know. I think Lee Ellis has killed 4.
yep.
I
Adam
want to say,
Hayes, all of them.
yeah, and Stan Potts, I think he's killed a handful. Um, but that is, yeah. Other than those brothers, I think everybody knows the handful of. Obviously, Josh Bomar's killed a handful of them.
Yep.
Um, but I just, really in the social side of this with like the active people, I'm fairly new to that. I really have plugged back into the outdoor scene and what everybody else is doing just honestly kind of recently, last couple of years here. So, and I've been chasing around the stories on specific deer and not so much following like who in particular has
Yeah,
got the most. You know what I mean? And I'm happy for him. That's incredible. To ever have a chance to get 1/200 in a
yeah,
lifetime is really, like, for those of us that have hunted our whole lives. It's statistically almost impossible.
yeah.
Um, it's not impossible, but uh,
I think I wouldn't have kids or be married if I wanted more than one 200 incher or a 200 incher. I think
mhm.
all my money would be in cell cameras and just traveling all over. Because it's cool what you said. Yeah, it seems to be not the 200. I know Josh has talked about this, but there's not, doesn't seem like there's 200s on many places. And if there's one genetically there, it's not always the case that there's always big bucks. It's usually an anomaly. There might be other big bucks, but not the 200s.
Right.
I've heard said. So for me, that's interesting to hear. And I know there was like the case of, I think it was Iowa last year or 2 years ago. There was two over 200 killed by a set of brothers on the same exact farm, which is absurd.
That's incredible.
Yeah, one was like 230 and the other one was like 208 or something, which is insane for the same farm. But yeah, it's just interesting to think about, and I like that you said, yeah, it's not about the hunters, it's about the deer, because that's more important. Because people, like, we know there's deer out there that we don't know about because the people don't want to be recognized, and that's cool. That's why I like going to knock on doors, because sometimes you'll run into people with giant deer that you'll never see on the internet.
Oh my gosh, man. That's probably one of the most intriguing parts of why we chase down all these stories. We're always looking for that next. like that, the next Sam Iopa buck kind of deal, where
Exactly.
it's been sitting there for many years and no one knows about it. And that's really what drives me. I think we talked about this on the Seek One podcast a couple of weeks ago, but someone asked the question, like, why do so many of these stories seem to be from like the 50s through the 80s and early 90s, but not so often now?
Mm-hmm.
And my answer was that back then, before there was an industry and before people really knew about them, and we didn't have social media, it was like a farmer would, get out of his tractor and kill a 240 and then take him home and process him for the family to eat. And then the antlers would get hung up on a wall somewhere and never talked about again, because they really didn't think about it like that. And then a lot of them had decades to have this, kind of like the general. There's a 66-year running story
Yeah.
now about the general and
All the
everything
new
that's
sheds
happened.
and everything.
Yeah, and really nowadays it just doesn't happen like that. Usually, if someone other than someone who's completely disconnected or does not want the information to get out, and that does exist,
Mm-hmm.
but if someone even lets any info out, everybody knows about it like the next day. And then usually it's shocking to me how many of these guys will kill a giant and then they'll sell it that quick.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of like the Huff Buck. I mean, it's a beautiful deer. It's a giant. It's a once in a lifetime deer, and it's incredible that he got it. But the story is very short because
Yeah.
the hunt was what it was, and then he had it for a certain amount of time and sold it, and um, that's it. That's the story. And I don't know if I personally could ever, if I ever was to be so fortunate to get a 200. I don't know, for any amount of money. I don't know, unless I needed to support my family
Yeah.
and to survive. But you'd almost have to pry it from my cold dead hands at the end of my life.
It's hard because all antlers collect dust at the end of the day. So I do understand the, let's say, the the intrigue of someone coming to you and saying, "Hey, we're gonna have our whatever that guy that owns all those Ohio bucks and he does like the Ohio show." He says, "Oh, we'll make you a replica. We're gonna pay you 200 grand for the deer, and then you'll be able to say that it's in this collection that everyone can come see this Ohio big buck collection. Like, so then everyone gets to see your deer. It's not just hidden away where no one can see it." I can
Sure.
see the appeal to that, but also you can make the argument, yeah, you can pay me and you can make a replica, but I still get to keep the original or something like that. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm
No, you're
I'm sure
right.
it's pretty
And
complex.
I'll reel it back a little bit because, you know, I've been fortunate in my, you know, latter 20s and into my 30s in my business journey and my career, where I, have the ability to say no to someone offering um, a sizable chunk of change. But, I spent most of my young life, working, living paycheck to paycheck. And if someone came along and said, "Hey, I'll give you $200,000 for your deer,"
Yeah,
it it would be the sums of money that are being put up are wild. Um, and that does change the dynamic a lot, because there's so many people that would be like, if I could get a replica and $200,000 would change my life and my family's life. And you can't blame someone for
sure.
making that decision by any stretch. Um, and I think the numbers are only going to continue to rise. Um,
Like anything nowadays.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny, when I got approached to sell the General, I was really excited. And then when I found out the asking price was going to be $1 million, I about fell out of my chair first, and then I got up and was like, "Well, okay." In the back of my head, though, I was like, that doesn't seem real. That
Yeah,
I mean, we can ask anything, but is that really something that can happen? And then it's crazy that 35 days later we sold it. So
yeah, yeah. It's a crazy world out there. I didn't even have a clue until a lot of people, I think, until that like whitetail cribs episode with that one guy, and
Yeah, Keith
just
Snyder.
yeah, just seeing the real estate and the amount of like insurance you need to have and all the crazy things I didn't even realize, couldn't even fathom. I will say I would never want to own a buck that I didn't shoot, but now my perspective's changed on that because I think it would be cool to have the bucks from my home state, some of the bigger ones. I
Sure.
think someone in Maine has collected them, like the Grafton buck or whatever. It was like a 215 from New Hampshire, and then the other one was the Clucky buck or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, but
Could be Brian Ross.
or no, he owns his still, the Clucky. But there's just
Okay.
there's replicas of it by what's that guy, Klaus.
Yeah, Klaus. Yeah, no, it's an interesting stance. I've thought a lot about the like, would you like to own? Um, it'd be like for me, if you like, because I'm a collector at heart too. I just love amazing things from nature.
Sure.
And I've collected other things too, dinosaur bones and other taxidermy and just interesting things from nature. But when you're talking about like I've been in Keith's room there in Ohio, and when you're talking about I made a post about this a while ago, just a quick reel, but there are like big deer, there's really big deer, and then there's like the that upper 0.0001% that
Hmm.
like people will say, well, I wouldn't want to have a deer that I didn't shoot. And it's like, that's fine, that's your prerogative, but you're not going to ever walk into your trophy room and see the hole in the horn and
Yeah.
the Illinois roadkill and the raveling buck and stuff like that. They're such statistical anomalies that it's just not the same thing. And it'd be like saying in any other category too, like I only want, you know, jerseys from games like basketball games that I played in. Well, it's like, well, if you didn't go to the NBA,
Yeah.
you're never going to have an NBA jersey. like
Exactly.
um, I just, and again, this comes down to the separation of collecting and hunting. And like, I personally, and my dad was like this too, where we were both fascinated with, like, my dad was big on the fur trade era.
Hmm.
So he still has a ton of stuff from like the Hudson's Bay era where, snow,
That's
like
cool.
authentic snowshoes and gunpowder and gold scales and beaver pelts and
Awesome.
all kinds of stuff from back then. And, but I get it. And I think that's what's so interesting sometimes to the audience right now about all these big deer because of the collecting, we're able to get a lot more of them in one place. So when you walk into a room full of truly world class deer, it's just if you love whitetails, it's something else entirely.
Yeah, and it's very like you said, nowadays a lot more things are out with social media and stuff, but I know people even my age, I think they've seen the cons of everyone knowing, or even for me, like my videos, fishing game has people that watch my videos and they've told me that just so like I know, like stay in line, which I haven't done anything wrong, but like they watch videos, they have people searching on stuff, and it's kind of crazy to think like I understand why people with like poaching allegations for others, like the kid that went on that podcast with the Ohio buck,
Yeah,
like
CJ Alexander.
CJ, like I can understand why some people like even if they do it ethically, it can tarnish someone's name. We see the Ron Paula buck, like whether you believe it's fake or real, like that kind of ruined his family's legacy in a way, or it helped it for depending on which stands you're on, I guess. But it's
Yeah,
like even the stories about his kids getting bullied at school, like I don't know if that's true, but like just because of all the attention, like different things that you don't think of that come outside of hunting, because hunters are very opinionated. We're never all going to get along. That's just a fact. But we can
right.
try our best to have a common ground. So for me, it's interesting to see all the different scenarios of how these bucks play out. But I know a kid, he's probably 2 years older than me. He's actually, I think he's 28, and he is the best mule deer hunter I've ever met. This kid doesn't post on social media, doesn't do anything, has multiple 200-inch bucks. He passes 190s with his bow, all on public land, not some mommy and daddy's ranch. Like, this kid is insane. And he shows it by he took out his wife the other day and got a collared, like, 180 buck. Like, he's just some of the
Amazing.
people that just aren't on social media are just amazing hunters, and those people are the ones that I try to learn from the most.
Oh man, I say that all the time about folks, and like from where I'm from out in Montana, um, and we're big on elk out there as well. But
Sure.
there's big muleys and stuff as well. But um, for every one person that everybody knows about on socials and stuff, there's 10 that are just incredible. And out there, again, I always make this distinction between just getting big animals and also the other side, which is like the actual woodsmanship. Out there you have mountains and you have elements, like
Mm-hmm.
serious elements. It can be dangerous. We've got grizzly bears, and a lot of these guys I'm talking about are running pack mule strings back into the back country and grizzly country, and it's just a whole different level of woodsmanship than being in a really rural setting,
Exactly.
where you're parking your truck at the gate and walking into a tree stand or a blind. And again, absolutely nothing wrong with that. They're hunting the area as you should, per that specific
Yeah.
place.
For the
But
elements you're in, yeah.
yeah, I've got people in my mind right now that no one's ever going to know about, that I know out west, that are just tough as nails and some of the baddest dudes in the woods. And it's so cool to spend time with them out there. And you'll never hear me say in all my life that I'm the best hunter, or yeah, I'm confident in my skills. I spent my whole life in the woods. I'm confident in what I can do, but I don't even get into playing that game. Who's better? That's the
Yeah.
one part I dislike about the hunting world in general, is just that, when I see somebody get a big buck or a giant bull elk or something, I'm excited for them, and I'm inspired by it. I can't imagine living my life being envious when,
Miserable and envious.
yeah, it's why don't there's some folks out there that just don't want to see others succeed, and it's not just the hunting world. That's any
Yeah, it's
realm
true.
that you get into. Um, and that was honestly probably something early on in my like journey with social media and stuff, where I had a couple years there where I went, man, there's a lot of negative people out there. And then I just got over it, and I'm like, I'm just not even gonna pay that any mind. There's always gonna be someone that's gonna say something. Um, but for like on there, for every one person that says something negative, there's 100 that are excited about it, and sending positive feedback, sharing their deer, and um, I'm there for that.
Yeah, I've said this on a lot of my videos that I've shot bucks in. You need to be happy with other people's success. Like, that's one of the most Christ-like things that you can do and have charity, is find happiness in other people's success. And I talk a lot about that because I think it's one of the hardest things to do. I think it goes against our nature of who we are, because we're judgmental people. Like, that's just like kind of like, I feel like our natural man, our nature. And especially social media, yeah, it doesn't make it any better seeing all the negatives. Like, it takes a lot to outweigh the negatives with positive. But for me, I I learned that through chasing a record deer. I um I chased a very large deer. It was top 10 in New Hampshire, and I really didn't know much at the time. I was just trying as hard as I could. John Eberhart was a huge influence in my life. I literally Googled his number online on the internet and called him up, and I was like, "Holy crap!" He answered the phone, and we talked for like an hour. And I'm 17 years old, hunted for a year, and he just gave me all this information. He put me on his newsletter for like emails, and as soon as I started doing scent lock and thinking a lot smarter, and honestly just walking in the woods until I was bumping deer, and then learning why they're there, how can I attack this point, and then I eventually found that really big one. I saw him 5 times in archery season, and then I moved to Idaho for college, And a week into rifle season, a kid with a cell camera and a rifle, his first deer ever, kills it. And then again, last year a buck was killed, and I was like, I'm not there to be able to hunt it, but it was killed 300 yards from my tree stand. It's just crazy. Like, you have to let it be okay and find happiness in them. Because that first one, I almost cried. I'm like, why am I crying over a deer that I don't own? It's a wild
Right.
deer. I'm like, this is absolutely pathetic. I was like 18 or 19, so like I guess I was still immature, obviously, but I was just like, why am I beating myself up like I did something wrong when it's just
Sure.
a deer? Obviously, one of those isn't going to come around very often, but the joy that you find, like when you have other people, it's like karma. People talk about. I truly think you're blessed if you can not take it personal and just get out there and try to find your own.
Well, and again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about the love of being out there. If you're so intently focused on getting a big deal, especially some of these guys that want to do it because of what notoriety and maybe sponsorships or attention that it'll bring, man, that'll eat you up from the inside out because you just, uh, it's like it's like starting a business and saying wanting to skip right to being a millionaire
Yeah,
before you run the business, and it's like it's the hardest thing in the world to do, but the people that are successful typically are the ones that say, I'm going to start this because I believe in it. And I'm going to spend the next 10 or 15 or 20 years working on it every single day. And if at some point, way down the road, everything comes together and I'm considered very successful, this is what's going to get me there. But it's like you can't put the cart before the horse.
yeah,
And we know, ironically, if you go back and read like the legendary whitetails stories and some of those, it's amazing how many of those deer, the stories are like, oh, this is just this kid went out for the first time ever and kills this like world class
exactly.
deer, or a guy
Happens
goes
a
and gets
lot.
rained out at once. Yeah, gets rained out at one spot and decides to try a new place and ends up killing the biggest deer of his life. There's a lot of luck involved and right place, right time. But that drives the guys that spend incredible amounts of time on it. That drives them crazy in a lot of cases because they're like, man, I have put my whole heart and soul into this, and then Bob down the street gets out of the tractor and just happens to bump into one that he shoots that's bigger than anything I'll ever get. But that's just the way it goes. That's how it works sometimes.
Yep,
Um, and that's why I don't put so much stock either in what the final score is of something. It's like you're just not going to be able to control if you get lucky enough one time in your life that that dream buck walks across and everything works out right and you get him, wonderful. But if that day never happens, you hunt your whole life and have amazing experiences and share it with people you care about, you're successful.
absolutely.
And that's what it's supposed to be about, at least in my book. Everybody can have. That's the other thing in the hunting world. There's this like group think where there's so many people on there that this is the way that it has to be. And I've always taken the stance like, look, if you're the guy that goes in there and says, I don't care a lick about the size, I just want to fill the freezer, that's great. If you're the guy that goes in and says, hey, I'm not shooting anything unless it's a 180 and I'll go years and years without ever, filling a tag, that's fine too. That's your choice.
Yeah,
I and then the guys would say, well, I don't want a deer on the wall that's not one that I shot. Okay, that's fine too. That's perfectly. It's a free country,
you
and
can have
and
an
we're
opinion.
welcome
It
to.
doesn't mean it needs to be an argument. You know.
Yeah, and look, if I woke up tomorrow and just decided the only thing I wanted to do for the rest of my life is hunt with a crossbow, I'm sure I'd get a lot of hate for it. Um, but I would do it. I've never hunted with a crossbow, but um,
Good.
just
No, I'm
people
just kidding.
feeling what.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But you know what I mean. It's like that. It's like
I'm
people
just
drawing a
kidding.
line in the sand and telling everyone else like because I feel strongly about it in this way, that means everyone else
Sure.
has to do it the way I think. And I've just really tried to stay away from that because even if you break up the lower 48 here, like if you there's a big difference in culture between being in Northwest Montana and Kentucky versus
Absolutely.
being in Louisiana, or you go down to South Texas. Like it's all different climates, different deer, a lot of different behavioral patterns from the deer, different cultures with the people surrounding the environment. It's just it's not a one size fits all thing. It's different everywhere you go.
I absolutely agree. It's different standards too, based on the cultures. It's I wish I was born in the wrong era. I think, which I'm not complaining because I've learned way more off of the internet than a lot of old timers in a quick period because they just didn't have that convenience.
Sure.
Other than the most you learn is just going out and failing in the woods. Um, but I wish I was around during the buck pull days. I wish we still did that in every state where you just can go and bring them to the check station. Now everything's electronic in most states, and I just think it's cool to see everybody, the camaraderie, the deer camp stuff, just all that is super fun. And I'm glad some states still do that. Um,
Yeah.
I do have
Yeah.
a weird question. This is the way my buddy phrased it. He said, "Kind of a weird question, but I wonder how many antlers Cody's dad has held in his hands or picked up."
Man. Well, I don't think it's a weird question, but that's almost an impossible.
I know.
I mean, I'll say this. I'm sure he's held way more than I have. But I personally, just even in shed hunting on my own, because I have gone hard every year in as long as I can remember, and I'm almost 40. Um, and I mean, I have found thousands and thousands personally, but then you add in the stuff that I've held that I didn't find
Sure.
or kill. I have no idea. But just to put it in perspective, just when my dad purchased Fred Goodwin's collection, there was like 1,700 heads in that collection.
Jeez.
And a lot of the giants too. I mean, he ended up during that time with the potato pile buck and the Flora Campbell buck, and
Wow.
he ended up obviously with the hole in the horn and the Illinois roadkill.
Is your
And the
dad
list
happily
just goes.
married?
He is, yeah, he is happily married. I don't, you know, but yeah, that's a really interesting question, and I think only the good Lord could actually tell me the number because I don't
Sure.
think anybody else would ever know.
Probably a million. I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, he's almost
It's
80 and
fathom.
he's been chasing after him. And I mean, you look at the days too back when they were buying them up and telling the stories. I mean,
Sure.
they were going somewhere every single day pretty much to see a new big deer
Wow.
all over the United States or all over North America, really. Like wherever a new story broke on a big deer, buying up collections and goodness, I
So let me ask you a question. Where do you think the next record deer will come from? And what are your top three favorite deer? And I'll put them on like the screen for people to see, like pictures of your favorites.
sure, sure. Well, I have to go for, I guess, the quick answer, the top three. My top three favorite deer, um, the hole in the horn, a lot in part. I love the deer, and just there's a ton of history with my family and that deer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but love that deer. And then the Hill Gould buck from Maine
Oh
is
yeah.
one of my all-time favorites there. And then I'll do a two-parter for my other one. You know, obviously now a lot of family history and a lot of personal history with me with the general. You know, I love that deer, but kind of coinciding right during that same time frame, very historical time in Nebraska, but it was not too awful far down the road where they killed the Dell Austin buck. Um, so Dell Austin has to be in there for me. That and he's just one of the coolest looking deer ever. I mean, not just aside from the fact that he's a giant, he's just under 280, but he's just the character. Yeah. So you said three, I gave you four: Hole in the Horn, Dell
No, that's
Austin,
fine.
Hill Gold, and the General. Um,
I don't know if I know
is
the Del Austin. Let me Google that really quick.
Oh man, yeah, you got to see the
Is that
Dell
the one
Austin
with the
buck.
drop tines? Or
Yeah, the
like
like the
comes off
dual
the
coming
base?
off. Yeah,
Oh, I watched that on like the Mossy Horns or whatever, that guy that
yeah,
tells all those tales.
yep.
Yep, I
Awesome,
remember that.
awesome deer.
So why do you like
And
that one? Just because the
you know,
trash
that's just
everywhere?
always, you know how like when you're a little kid and you don't have like logic behind why you like you might if you like dinosaurs you pick if you're a young boy you're going to pick like a velociraptor and a T-Rex. They're your favorites. It was just one of those ones that was so visually striking, and I daydreamed about like having that deer in my collection and being able to like hold him and show him and inspect him and um just and my dad owned him at one point as well.
That makes sense.
Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, just I've always loved that deer. And the Hill Gould is a lot the same for me for that reason because he's just got such a unique look to him. Um, I, and I'm supposed to go see him um in the next month or two. Go see that collection that he's in. So I'm really excited about that. I've never actually gotten to hold that deer,
I was lucky enough
but
to hold the main one, the gold buck, or be able to see it at Huntstock, hunting expo this year. It was absolutely unreal. They had two other main giants up there, and just how old it is and the palmation. Like for me, I think some of the coolest things, time length, all that stuff is really cool. I like mass, even though it doesn't help for score. The mass of tines, I think, is one cool thing, and palmation like a buck or a moose.
yeah,
I think those are so cool, and they're very common, like in Saskatchewan, and it seemed
yeah.
like that buck that you posted in Montana on your story, like bucks like those, just like that genetic, and you get into like the northern Maine, like British Columbia, all those places, like they have some just giant mass bucks, and I think that's the coolest thing.
Love the mass. Here's my like one of my favorite things is when a deer can have the mass and have a bunch of junk too, but still throw a really good frame
Yep.
versus just you know like let's say versus just being say like a mainframe 130 that ends up being a 200 because it's got stuff going everywhere. I love when they can have if they get huge but they keep a huge frame. There's something about that for me. I don't always. I'd say my least favorite characteristic is when a deer is just all junk and it's just a mess of stuff going everywhere.
Like the
Um,
Illinois record one, I've heard a lot of people say they weren't not this nothing to take away from the deer. It's 300 plus inches or whatever, but I've heard a lot of people say, "Well, it wasn't as big as I thought it was. It just had points everywhere."
yeah, yeah. It's well, and it's. I'll have to find this picture and send it to you. But actually, in Keith Snyder's showroom there in Ohio, we were always talking about how big the Illinois Roadkill's frame is
Mm.
because he nets 176 or something like that, but he is truly one of the greatest typical frames ever.
Wasn't it like
And
30 inches head or bottom to top or something crazy?
gosh, well, I don't know if he's that tall, but he's super tall though.
It's something. It's there's some measurement that he mentioned that it was like 3 feet or 30 inches like tall or something crazy, which
Yeah,
I was like, holy crap. It's on that video, but
yeah. But I mean, I've seen two different pictures in that room where one, he, someone was holding a buck underneath the Illinois roadkill in there that was like a gross 238 or 240.
yep.
And the Illinois roadkill makes him look tiny.
Yeah.
And I just saw a picture the other day with the huff buck underneath the Illinois roadkill, and it, it's not even close.
Yeah.
It's wild looking, and that's not to take anything away from the huff buck because that is a doggone giant, but
Mass.
that just shows how big Illinois roadkill's frame really is.
Exactly.
So I love a big frame, and I'm not against having drop tines and kickers and junk, but I just love when they hold that frame too, and the junk can go wherever it wants. But um, I don't. It's not my favorite. It's not my personal preference when a deer antler looks like a flame or something, you know.
Sure.
But
No, that makes sense. My favorite example of that is like Lee's bucks. Zeus is one of the coolest bucks I've ever seen because the frame is absolutely enormous. The beams bend downwards, but then you have the other bucks that he has. They score more, but they could fit inside him easy.
Yeah, I just watched that episode the other day, and I was pumped to be able to. We got to handle his, the buck he got in, I believe it was Ohio, and then he found the sheds after he brought those with him when we did that episode.
Were they as big as
Uh,
they look?
Oh, it's a giant, yeah, and it's absolute, and it's funny because he acted like he knew we were going to bring some big stuff in for him to see, and he was like, "Man, this probably won't hang," and
Yeah.
he's an absolute giant, and I think I can't remember the exact measurements. Mike Sharuis, the antler collector, measured them when we were out there, and I believe one side scored 104 or 106, and the other side scored like 96. He was right at 200 or just over 200 without having a spread added in.
That's insane.
So I mean, he's a giant no matter where you go. I don't care.
Do you like width too,
Absolutely.
or spread, I should say?
Yeah, and I just think that what I like it though for is not because of the measurements. I like it because of how they look on the hoof
Correct.
when they're
Yeah.
wide,
Yeah.
especially when they're like walking away from you. When you got
Oh
one that's
yeah.
way outside his ears, and they look like they're wearing like a rocking chair on their head.
Yeah.
It's just there's something about it. But there's a few of the old bucks that I really like that are not real wide. They're high and tight that have really cool characteristics. But yeah, if wide, and then when you add wide and heavy together, it's a pretty deadly combination.
Yeah, and I won't keep you much longer. The last question I wanted to ask you, and you could probably talk about it for hours, but you've traveled and your dad's traveled and talked to all these different people. What do you think the common denominator is, or a couple different things that you've heard of how people have killed these deer? Not the ones by luck necessarily, but if there is commonalities in that, what's the biggest commonality of these giant bucks? What killed them, and how did they get so big?
Well, are you saying like commonality with what the hunters are doing, or if there's a common trait that these big deer share?
Um, I guess it's a two-parter because I know part of it has to do with genetics, minerals, and other different factors.
Sure.
But I guess from a hunting perspective, for the people listening, like, what are some common things that the hunters did to be successful or to find these big deer?
Well, I'll keep that short and sweet because obviously anybody who's hunted knows there's a lot more factors than just this. But
Absolutely.
from the hunting perspective, spending a ton of time in the woods. The more you're in there, the more chances that you might quote unquote get lucky. Um, like if you're trying to up your odds, there's nothing that beats pure time in the woods and scouting and looking. And I mean, again, that's like a Lee Ellis trait that for those that have followed him, they know. But I mean, I just spent a couple days with him, and he truly is that eaten up with the pursuit. He's
Yeah, you
when
have to be obsessed.
Yeah, he's scouting nonstop, and when he's not, he's going over stuff in his head. He's talking about scenarios. He's game planning. I mean, this dude, the whole time we were with him, it's like when we had a break in between filming and different stuff, he'd sit and start talking about other deer and show us trail cam pictures. And I mean, he is turning it over in his mind 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And so even though he's killed a lot of big deer, but I don't think a lot of people understand the sheer volume of time that he's spent and put into that. And so people go, how does he keep finding all these big deer? Well, he is turning over stones constantly.
Yeah.
So the trait for the hunter, plus you just get better at everything you do. Like if you're spending time out there with them, you're like you said earlier, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn the hard way when you push a deer out or you get winded or, you try an approach that doesn't work. It's just pure time. If you're not counting on getting lucky, pure time spent. I always give this analogy to people because I'm big into the gym. And I'm like, it'd be like saying I want to be, a pro bodybuilder, but I don't want to go to the gym. When you come to find out, when a lot of those people get to the stage that they're like elite, they've spent 20 years of going to the gym every single day and
Yeah.
spending money, time, and energy outside when they're not in the gym, on their diet and their nutrition, and learning more about it. And so it's that. And man, and then when it comes to the deer themselves, I think this day and age, I think a lot of guys would tell you, gosh, you got to get in an area where the deer at least have a decent chance to get past 3 or 4 years old.
Yep.
It's even
Go
some of
where
the
people
great,
can't or where they won't. That's what I say.
yeah, yeah, they've got to have, and then all the other factors like stress and pressure and feed and nutrition and all that. But it's just really, I've been in some great areas that I've thought, man, this place would have giants if they didn't get shot, long before their peak. And again, that's where you'll hear all this argument against, not against, but just so many guys bring up the private land thing because that's the majority of the areas, especially in the more populated states, where deer are actually getting to live long enough to
Yep.
show what they can do. And that is right there why I love like northern and central Alberta and Saskatchewan, because there's so much country. It's so quiet in most of it that truly wild deer that no one even knows about are like dying of old age in a lot of cases. There's giants that are naturally growing
30
and
miles from
getting
the next hunter or something because they're all
right.
connected or whatever.
Exactly. Now I'm biased because I grew up right on the Canadian border in Montana there. And so like when we had our choice, where do we want to go to chase big whitetails? Um, it was always up north. I know the Midwest has some giants. I just haven't spent nearly as much time out that way as I have up north.
Sure. Well, I guess my last part of that question would be: so, is there any common denominators? Like, what percent? I know you're not gonna have like numbers or anything, but what percentage of these deer are getting killed on like near cornfields or soybeans, or let's say, are they on scrapes? Like, I'm just curious if your dad and you have talked to all these hunters. Like, have they shared any of that? Like, how they got them, or what time of day? If there's any like common things, because obviously every factor is different with the time, the temperature, all that.
Sure, sure. Well, like case in point, yeah, like if you go up north, the cold weather is always a huge factor because, if you're in Alberta, Saskatchewan in, October, November, I mean, it's not uncommon to have it be 40 below. And, or if you're in Montana that time of year, there might be 2.5, 3 foot of snow on the ground.
Yeah.
They move more. Obviously the moon cycles and stuff like that, plays a role. Um, I've always heard about the biggest bucks somewhere in their like late 3, early 4 years old, almost tending to be mostly nocturnal in their movements. And then, so really what that lends itself to, if you have a chance to get them, it's like first light in the morning, last few minutes of daylight kind of thing at the end of the day.
Sure.
But you got to remember too, to answer that question, it's changed a lot since like my dad's heyday. They had to spend so much time in the field scouting that like how they ultimately ended up on a big deer was a little different than a lot of cases now, where someone sees a great area, puts a camera in there, and is able to figure out, oh, there he is. Like there's the big deer, and you can kind of pattern them when they're
Yeah.
coming through.
I'm poor. I
Um,
still have to do that, Cody.
hey, look, and I don't claim like as a hunter, I'm like I'm an opportunist like I am in business, where it's like you have to take every ethical advantage that you can get. I'm not condoning doing anything illegal or you know cutting corners, but if you're in an area like in Montana, most of my years before I moved, um, the trail cams were not allowed during the season. You could only have them before and after. Um, I don't know. I don't know if that's changed now. It's been a handful of years since I hunted whitetail out there, but um, you know, if it was legal and it was allowed, yeah, you're darn right. I'd stick a camera in there because if I can get a tactical advantage, um, So I don't think it comes down to, I don't know, man. Food sources, water, and cover. That that's always it's that is consistent.
Railroads. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah.
I've
Railroads.
seen that pattern though. I'm not gonna lie. From a lot of those like mega giants, it seems that there's a bunch of like not just the roadkill or the hole in the horn with like the fence thing in it. Like I've heard a lot of people say that like a lot of those bucks are on the railroads.
Well, if it's anything like out west, like BNSF is what runs right through my hometown. They own a ton of land, and basically just by pure circumstance, they keep a lot of people off of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they landlock certain areas and stuff.
That's true.
Um, so I think even by just pure circumstance, there's a lot more private ground because of it. And if you go out west, man, some of these really, really remote areas, the train tracks are the only thing that runs through there. You can't even get to them. You could hike in there 10
Yeah.
miles, or you could see them from a train, but that's the only way anyone's seeing that animal. Um, yeah, gosh, man, especially when you get up to the big stuff, it seems like you throw in the statistical odds of something growing to that elite level, then you take in account for pressure, predators, other hunters, all these other factors. Hopefully not CWD, but that is the case. And there's just so many factors that have to be just right. Um, that just when I think I've got them pretty well figured out, based on what I've learned from one area, you go to another area and it's a completely different set of circumstances.
It's very true. They're smart. That's true, and it's definitely a battle. Every different factor can matter, and sometimes I just wish I could go in clueless, and then maybe I'll get a 200.
That's probably how it's going to happen, man. You're going to walk in one day
Yep.
not super excited about your spot or where you're going, not feeling super excited, and then boom, it's going to happen.
This guy made these videos 20 years ago, and he was saying they all set up on this one side of the field because the wind was correct, and the one guy that they brought, he didn't know how to hunt. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go over there," and they're like, "Well, you're not gonna see anything over there." He's like, "Ah, it's fine." He ended up killing the 180. So you never know.
That's it. That's how it happens, man.
Well, I'll let you go, but I really appreciate your time, taking the time to talk to me, especially for an hour. I know that's a big portion of your time, so I really appreciate it, and I do hope you have a good rest of your day, and hope your dad's doing well, and the business goes well.
Yeah, thank you, man, and I appreciate you having me. If you want to do another one with video involved, and I actually, us meeting here, I hung the OG replica on the back wall here, and the shoulder mount of the
Oh,
general
sweet.
without the kickers behind me for visual, and then we didn't even get to use it. So
Oh, okay. I'll tell you what. Take a picture of it, and we'll put it in,
cool,
and
cool.
we'll
Yeah,
do another visual one, or if you come out west again, we can meet up in person and do something.
where are you located?
So right now I'm in Utah. I'm originally from New England, but I moved out to Utah about a year and a half ago. So I'm up here. Do you know where Payson, Utah is? Like below Provo or Salt Lake City, down there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, man. I'm going out to Jackson Hole tomorrow.
Oh, I love
Um,
Jackson. Yeah,
and then I believe we have an art show in November in Park City.
that's not far at all. I actually work near there, so
Cool. So yeah, if we want to link up there, let me know and
yeah, let's
we can
do it.
maybe do another one.
When did you say you're doing that?
I gotta confirm it's in November. I just have to confirm.
Okay,
I'm working with about three other parties that are getting their calendars in order as well. So I don't have a day yet, but I'll shoot you a text when we pin down the exact days we're doing it.
okay. I have a cow hunt that first week, but then other than that, I'm free. So
Cool. Cool. Well, we'll line it up, man. Well, Kyle, I really appreciate you having me, and I'll send you some pictures and let me know. I've got any of the other stuff I have too on like socials and stuff. If you want any of those pictures for thumbnails or
yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
let me know and I'll send them over.
Sweet. Well, I appreciate your time, and thanks so much for devoting all your time to keep these memories and these bucks alive in people's history books. So I appreciate it.
Well, it's an honor, man, and I appreciate it. You have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye bye.